This session is about the intelligent intranet. And we believe and we see in our customers that it's more important than ever that an organization has a tool to empower all communicators to keep the organization informed and up to date from the top of the organization to the bottom, but also from the bottom to the top and side to side. If information is moving faster outside your organization than it's moving inside your organization, you risk disruption in today's world. And so you need to have a tool to allow that kind of rapid, boundaryless communication within your organization. The intranet gives you that capability. It allows you to power a variety of initiatives in your organization, from simply powering better and more effective file sharing and collaboration, to enabling teams to share data and automate processes, to enabling employee engagement with communications and digital experiences, and finally, to connect the workplace for sharing knowledge and content. All of these things have been the role of SharePoint in the past, and you'll see what we've done to bring those capabilities into the modern workplace using SharePoint's technologies on the intranet itself in a browser, but also bringing those experiences into Microsoft Teams, so that one of the big differences of the intranet from the past and today is that today's intranet is not just something you have to go to find information. It's something that brings information, content, expertise, and processes right to you where you're working inside of Microsoft Teams. And of course, the content that's on the intranet, that's powering collaboration across your organization, needs to be something that can be governed. And so SharePoint builds upon its legacy of allowing you to make sure that your content is secure and governed, and gives developers and end users alike the ability to build custom solutions. End users can use capabilities like Microsoft Forms, Power Apps, and Flow. Developers can use the SharePoint framework to build modern client-side extensions to Microsoft 365, tapping into your enterprise content with REST APIs. So the intelligent intranet today is something that powers teamwork, employee engagement, and communications. And you'll see in this session that we fundamentally believe the intranet needs to be gut simple. We call it consumer simplicity. It needs to enable any user to create pages, sites, and content with the same simplicity that they post to a consumer social media tool or use a consumer web building tool such as Wix or Squarespace to build their public intranet sites for themselves. It needs to be accessible. And accessible means two things, really. It needs to be accessible across devices, and the intelligent intranet based on SharePoint is natively responsive and looks beautiful in the SharePoint mobile app. So it's available across your favorite devices. Accessible also means it needs to be accessible to those who have special needs with sight or hearing. And we do all of the work to make sure that the sites and pages you build with SharePoint are accessible, which makes them as inclusive as possible for today's workforce. Of course, it needs to be secure, and it needs to be integrated with the apps that people use every day, so that if I'm creating content, let's say in Microsoft Word, I can turn that into a web page. If I am working inside of Microsoft Teams, I can get the content I need from the intranet without having to leave Teams. And I can bring together the powers of Microsoft Office, like Yammer for conversation and Stream for video. It needs to be intelligent, in other words, helping me do my work better as a human being, augmenting my capabilities, and helping me make decisions faster. And it needs to be extensible, something that the organization can build custom solutions on. So that's the frame that we're going to look at the intranet from. For those of you who are technical, and I know most of you in the room are, behind the scenes, all of these capabilities are powered by SharePoint. SharePoint provides the core content services for Microsoft Office. If you're working with email in Office, it's stored in Exchange, video is stored in Stream, and chat is stored in Teams. But other than that, the content you're working with is stored in SharePoint. The files, for sure, no matter where you work with files in Microsoft Office, whether it's Outlook, Teams, Yammer, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, it's stored in SharePoint, which powers collaboration and co-authoring experiences across all of our applications. SharePoint stores those files in sites, in websites, that also allow you to share news, lists, apps, and even mixed reality spaces, as we announced at the SharePoint conference last year. So SharePoint provides the core content services and content containers to power those experiences. And that content is part of Microsoft 365. So your content accrues all of the capabilities that Microsoft 365 provides, from security, AI, universal search, automation through capabilities like Microsoft Flow, and extensibility. So from a technical perspective, SharePoint is still at the core of your intranet, but it's less about SharePoint and more about what you're doing with it. How are you engaging employees? How are you communicating with them? How are you sharing knowledge? And how are you powering collaboration? So let's go ahead and dive in to SharePoint itself, since that's what this session is about. And 3 years ago, we set on a journey to modernize SharePoint. Many organizations around the world have been building award-winning intranets on SharePoint for nearly 20 years, but we knew it was time to build SharePoint from the cloud up, so to speak. And we created new modern experiences to bring new superpowers to SharePoint and to evolve the on-premises experiences to be cloud first and mobile first. We gave you new ways to build Webparts, to author pages, to distribute news, to build sites and hubs to organize your intranet, to build portals, and we gave you the SharePoint mobile app as a first-class way to experience content on your mobile devices. Along the way, there were dozens of individual innovations. If you're curious about them, you can visit the SharePoint blog, and we have all those documented for you. But the net is that we are now at a point where in modern SharePoint online, you can do just about everything that you could ever do with classic SharePoint as far as building intranets. I'll point out the 1 or 2 small things we have left to do, and I'll give you the roadmap for when we're completing them, specifically page scheduling and multilingual. Those are coming this year, and those are the final 2 building blocks for us. And all of those features will be looked at as we go through this session, looking at SharePoint News, communication sites, which allow you to communicate broadly across the organization, hub sites that let you organize your intranet, and landing experiences that let you build modern digital employee experiences, what you might call portals for your organization. So we're going to first look at SharePoint News. SharePoint News allows you to inform and engage your team or your organization. It's a way of keeping people up to date. Now let's start by thinking about how most of our companies do that today, and that is with an email blast. I write an email, I make an announcement, I send it to everybody, and that's one way of communicating with people, but it has some limitations based on compared to what we have possible in the cloud and on our mobile devices. First, email is really just text. I might be able to get some pictures in there. I can struggle to make it look great. It's going to be impossible for me to embed video or to embed dynamic content such as dashboards from Power BI. And so it's limited as far as the types of content I can get into that communication. Secondly, it lands in everyone's inbox and it stays there. It isn't available to someone who joins the organization tomorrow. It's siloed and it disappears as I leave the organization and as people leave the organization. It doesn't create persistent, reusable knowledge. Third, it doesn't really drive engagement. If you think about a company that sends an email to everyone in the organization, that company has probably turned off the reply all function to the company distribution list, right? So it doesn't really drive engagement. It doesn't foster dialogue, which is so important in today's organization to get feedback and ideas and to iterate quickly. So let's take a look at how SharePoint News allows you to transform communications in your organization across devices. So we're going to do most of this in demo today, and my phone went to sleep, so let me wake it back up here. There we go. So let's start by imagining that I just got a mobile notification. Because the phone was asleep, the notification disappeared. But I could get a notification for a new piece of news that would take me directly into the SharePoint mobile application. The SharePoint mobile application is a great place to find and connect with content across your organization, including news. So on the News tab, you can see that I have a list of recent news from my organization, including the quadcopter safety program that was just announced and that I got a notification for. I can tap into that, and I have a first-class responsive experience with the content. We can see it's much richer than what would be possible in email. It has photos, it has lots of formatting, and it even has dynamic web parts, such as a list of upcoming events, people web part that is showing us Miriam, and I can tap that and it actually shows me information about Miriam coming from Microsoft Graph. We have an embedded video that I can tap and start playing the video if I want to. We'll see how fast the network is here. So I can watch that video. This is Microsoft Stream powering that video. Oh, and because of the way I'm sharing my phone, you're not seeing the video, but I am. And then going down a little bit further, some data, a lot of images. And so I have a really rich experience on my mobile device. And the way whoops, you're still not seeing it. Let me remirror. Looks like the video killed the mirroring. Let me just start that again. Come on, Air server. Oh, it came up just as I closed it. There we go. Now I completely forgot what I was saying. Oh, I personally use SharePoint News to keep on top of news at Microsoft. I find that when I'm at my desk, I generally am on task or I'm in a meeting. I'm focused on my work. And I don't generally have the time to tap into what's going on around the rest of the organization. But when I'm on the bus or the train, waiting in line for coffee, I often pull out the SharePoint mobile app and use it to see what's going on in the organization. You'll notice on the, the network here is slow, I apologize. So I can look at the news across my organization, I can tap into an article, and you'll notice at the bottom of the screen, I can actually engage with the article on my phone. I can like it, I can put in a comment, and I can even @mention someone. So for example, I might @mention Miriam and say, thanks for launching this program. I could have even done it with voice since my phone has voice, but I just didn't do that fast enough. And she'll actually get an email message that I @mentioned her. So I've got, of course, the ability to reshare that article using the standard share gestures from my iOS or Android device. At the top of the screen, you'll notice a little flag. That's my bookmark. I can save this article for later. If it's something that I want to return to and review, or maybe I just don't have time to read it right now, I can save it for later. And then in the SharePoint mobile application, on the bottom right, you'll notice the Me tab. And the Me tab allows me to look at my saved items, and there's that article that I've saved for later. So we can see that SharePoint News is a rich way to communicate with people. The formatting is great. It allows me to bring in all kinds of, and to consume all kinds of content from across Microsoft 365. Now let's jump to the communicators side. Let's see how easy it is to actually create this kind of rich news in SharePoint. So we're going to jump up to a site we have on the Contoso intranet. And we can see that same article is showcased here on the news site. Now you can have news in any site in your intranet. You can have it at an organizational level, at a divisional, functional level. You could have it on your individual teams. In this case, just to make the demonstration really clear, we have a site dedicated for news at Contoso, and the people who have permission to create news on that site have the ability to author news, and I do. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new news post announcing a new employee who's joining the company. At Microsoft, whenever we have a new employee join, we generally still use email. And it's a perfect example of the challenges of using email, because someone will send out an announcement saying, welcome Naomi to the team, and everyone will reply saying, oh, welcome Naomi, it's great to have you here, come have lunch with me. And it just fills up everyone's inbox with a bunch of communications that is not really helping me be more productive as a human being. But here we can use SharePoint News to make that a much more rich and engaging experience. So I choose to create a new news post, and you'll see we have page templates. This is shipping right now. It's a brand new feature we announced at Ignite, and it is currently in the process of rolling out. And we have a couple of sample templates, and then you as an owner of a site can create your own templates, and the organization can distribute those. So we have a template specifically for new employee announcements that has a layout that helps ensure consistency. And it makes me more productive as a communicator. I don't have to do everything from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and create a post from that template. And then I simply fill in the blanks. So I'm going to welcome Naomi Moneypenny to the team. That is really someone who works at Microsoft. That's her real name, believe it or not. Many of you know her. I am going to put myself here as the byline, but I could obviously be writing this for someone else. And then we're ready to continue filling in the blank. Now what you're seeing on the page are called Webparts. So we have some text Webparts, some image Webparts, and now we're going to fill in the main part of the text here. And I can simply delete that and get ready to type that. And you'll notice I have controls for formatting. But sometimes it's easier just to bring content in that you've created elsewhere. So in this specific case, I've been drafting this article in Word, and I can go ahead and select that, copy it, come back to our new page, and paste. And you'll notice it brings in formatting, including bullets that we've got here. So it looks really great. And in addition, as I hover over this web part, I've got all of the other formatting controls. If I click the More button, I have very rich control over the formatting of this particular text. So let's go ahead and move on to the image. I'm going to, as I hover over the image, you'll notice the editing controls appear for that image web part. So I can edit that. I can go change the image. And I can either upload an image from my computer, I could search the web for an image, and we are in the process of getting ready to ship what we call the Organizational Assets Repository, which is a place that the organization can configure with sanctioned images, logos, and other content. So for example, you might have stock art that you've licensed or official logos, and I can go in and browse for those and bring them into my content. One of the great features of this is they're linked, so that if ever the original changes, you can change it in one place, and all of the content using that asset will be updated as well. In this case, I've got the image on this site in one of my libraries, so I'm going to add this image of Naomi. And you'll notice that it automatically suggests some accessibility text. So it has automatically recognized a woman smiling for the camera. That's our AI looking at the image and actually figuring that out. I can certainly change that if I want to and put in the right thing. I can also have the ability to do cropping and other image controls. I'll go ahead and finish that out for now. And then I'm going to replace the caption with her name, Naomi Moneypenny. So with that, I've changed a couple of web parts. Now, these web parts exist in a section of the page, and this particular section has 2 columns, and I could change the layout of those sections, and I can even drag web parts around. So if I wanted to move a web part, the picture over to this side, and maybe move the text to this side, it's simply drag and drop. So it's as easy to create pages on the web as it would be in PowerPoint to create a slide. When I go down, you'll see a section that actually has a background color. So if I go to the editing of this, you'll notice it has a dark blue background. The colors come from the site theme. So the theme, which is determined by the site or the hub or the organization, manages the colors to give you branding. And then we ensure that the colors you choose from your theme are accessible. So for example, if you choose a lighter background, we will use darker text. If you choose a darker background, we'll use lighter text. We make sure that those accessibility needs are met. And I'm going to go ahead and replace the text here with her motto. And then further down here, we've got one of my favorite web parts. This web part is the people web part. And the people web part lets you bring information from user profiles into sites and pages to provide rich details about people. So in this case, this page is about Naomi. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of Alex, and I'm going to add in Naomi's own profile from Active Directory. And then we also can use another people web part here to showcase who her team is. So for example, her mentor is Patty Fernandez, so we've added Patty as a people web part. Now, in this context, Patty is Naomi's mentor. And so I can add that text to provide some context as to what Patty is here for this particular news article. This doesn't become part of Patty's permanent profile, but we can put that in there. And in addition, we've got Christy, who is Naomi's onboarding buddy. And actually, I was wrong. Patty is Naomi's manager. And Miriam is Naomi's mentor. So we've got a great way to bring rich content from Microsoft 365, including Azure Active Directory, into the article. And then at the bottom of the page, we have some links. So for example, in our employee announcements, we might help you learn more about an employee by linking to their favorite charity, their favorite destination in the world, their favorite books or movies, for example. And then at the bottom of the page, I've got the ability to control that engagement. So in this case, I do want people welcoming Naomi and being able to communicate and glom on to this particular article. So I'm going to leave that there. So all done now. I've modified web parts. We've looked at sections. Obviously, I could delete one of these web parts if I wanted to. And if I want to add additional content that isn't on the page, I simply look for the plus signs. And the plus signs bring up a gallery of web parts that have dozens and dozens of different pieces and types of content that you can bring in from Office 365 and beyond. And there's so many now that we are giving you see all links and a search function so that it's easy for you to say, hey, I want to add a video, and you can search down and then choose whether it's from Stream or from YouTube, for example. So when we're all done, we've created this great page, and we're going to post it in just a minute. Before I do, I'm going to pull up the page details. The page details allow me to control how the page appears when it is surfaced throughout the organization. And for example, I can choose a thumbnail. So I can say, let's go ahead and make the thumbnail the same. Same as the picture of Naomi. And I can put in a quick description. Welcome, Naomi, to Patty's team. And so that will sort of control that social link, the kind of thing you see when people share links on Facebook or elsewhere. When I look below, we also see properties of the page. And this is going to be super important to control who sees this article. There's a lot of news and a lot of communications that are going out in today's modern workplace and our customers. And you want to make sure that the right news gets to the right people at the right device. And one way to do that is by filtering and targeting content. And so what we see in the first three items here are three properties, three pieces of metadata that allow me to specify certain qualities of this article. So I'm going to say it's featured, it goes into the category employee highlights, and then I could choose a month if I wanted to for this particular article. These are simply columns in the Pages library of SharePoint. So you can go to the Pages library of SharePoint and you can add any columns you want, as many, as few. You can add whatever types you want. It's just like a normal SharePoint lister library. So for those of you who are used to SharePoint, which most of you are, you can let your imaginations go wild. Any metadata you want can be part of your page definition here. The one that's a little unique is audience. Audience is our new audience targeting capability in modern SharePoint pages. And audience allows you to specify a group of people to whom this article will bubble up and will be extra visible. So for example, I might want to make sure that this article is visible to our marketing team. So I'm going to go ahead and type marketing and pick that group. And you can point to any Azure Active Directory group. Now, for those of you who are newer to SharePoint, it's pretty obvious. You put in a group, and that's who will see this article. Now, this is not a permission. The page can have permissions. The site and the library can have permissions. Those will control who has access to the article. This is targeting. This is saying not only do these people have access, but I really want to push it to them. I want to make it extra visible. And so if you are in this group, you will see this article when we have targeted news experiences. You could then share it with someone else who is not in that group, but who also has access to the page, and they'll be able to see it. So it's not the same as permissions. Hopefully that makes sense. The other thing that's important is for those of you who are used to SharePoint. For a long time, SharePoint has had audience targeting, which was completely separate from Active Directory. And you had to go and configure a bunch of rules and properties, and then you had to wait for the job to compile the audiences, which could take up to a week. So it took forever for the targeting to actually work the way you wanted. That's all part of the past. That's part of classic SharePoint. It's not gone, but it's not part of modern. Now we're using Azure Active Directory groups, and it has some great benefits. First, our research was very clear that our customers have groups. They have groups that define the regions where people work, the roles that they hold, the functions that they're in, because each of those groups need access to applications and data and all kinds of other stuff. So we might as well just use those groups. Secondly, Azure Active Directory groups can be dynamic. You can define a group that says department equals marketing, and that could dynamically include anyone who's in marketing will see this article. And as people come into and leave that team, it all happens automatically if you're using Azure Active Directory dynamic groups. So this is a much, much more powerful and effective way to target content. It's instant targeting because it's based on your groups, and your groups take effect right away. So it really is a wonderful, wonderful addition to SharePoint pages. So when we're all done, we're going to post this news article. Now, it is possible to add an approval workflow where if I'm an author, someone else has to approve it. I did not configure that on this particular site just to make the demo a little bit faster. But if there was an approval, the people who are approvers would get an email message and flow notification. They could approve it, and you can customize that flow. So it's an out-of-box approval based on Microsoft Flow, and you can break open that approval and make it as custom as you want to make it. So with that then, we've configured, we published that article, and let's take a quick look through here. Let me go back and make sure that I specified that it was featured. There we go. There's one little bug in the demo code that I've got, so it didn't actually publish as news. Now it did. So there we go. So now we're already seeing that news surface in a news web part on the homepage of our news site. And we'll talk more about that, what that means in just a minute. So we've created a rich article that contains all the information we need, has metadata to get that news into the right place. And you can use this for something as simple as a new employee or something more complex. For example, here's an article that we were looking at on the mobile phone. And you'll notice here it renders beautifully for a wide browser that was about the quadcopter safety program. Again, with an image, parallax scrolling, section backgrounds, an events web part that allows me to go in and see an event, links to other resources, a people web part that exposes information about that person, in that embedded stream video that we tried to see on our phone and the AirPlay wouldn't play it, and that image gallery. Again, we can see the engagement with the content there as well. So those are a couple of examples of how news can be used to communicate. Now, the next step of this is to get the news in the right place for your audience. And there's a couple of options that you have to choose from. One is to use SharePoint sites and pages with news web parts and to create an experience that puts the right news in front of your users. That's what we have here, for example. So on this page, which again is the home page of a site called News, on this page, we actually have several different news web parts in play. We have this one, there's one on the left, There's another one down here. There's 2 more here. All of these are different news web parts that are using different layouts, different filters, and different rules to determine what news to show where. Does that make sense conceptually? All right, let's look at it in detail. If I edit this page, site pages are just like news pages. They're made up of sections and parts. We have a news web part here that if I edit it, we'll see this particular news web part is pulling news from this one site. It is using a carousel layout with 5 items, and it is putting news in those slots in automatic order, meaning using the intelligence of the graph to get the right news in front of me. But it is filtering news based on featured equals yes. You'll remember that was one of the properties we saw on the page. So only featured news will show up in this carousel. If we look at this news web part is pulling news from 2 specific sites. It's pulling it from a site for our leadership that we'll see actually in a few minutes. It's using a different layout called list. And if we go down here, we'll see other configuration for the My News web part. And the My News web part is pulling news recommended for the current user. This is personalized news. So I'll see news that's different from you. It'll be based on the teams, the groups, the roles I play in the organization, my audiences, and even information about what people around me are finding interesting, what's trending, so to speak. It uses intelligence signals from the graph. So we're using recommended for the current user for this news web part, so it's totally personalized. Now I've got the ability to do a lot more with these news web parts. So for example, I have the ability to specify certain news in certain places. So you'll notice right now these are automatic. I can select news articles and I can put them in the specific spots I want them to be in. So I can really curate the order of the news. That's one option. The other thing I can do is turn on audience targeting. And this is the switch that means you will see in this particular news web part, you'll see news that's right for your audiences based on the groups you belong to. I'll see news that's based on the groups I belong to. So lots and lots of opportunity there to create a really rich, curated news experience. Now, news also surfaces in anywhere that you have a news web part. In addition, it surfaces on SharePoint Home. So if we go up to click SharePoint in the suite bar or SharePoint from the menu, this is the SharePoint Home experience, and this shows me news that's relevant to me. Again, based on my groups, my memberships, my audiences. And you'll notice in this view, some of the news has this visual badge that says News at Contoso. This is part of a new feature called Organizational News, and it allows the organization to specify 1 or more sites that have official news. And that news then surfaces to everyone who has access and gets a visual badge to call attention to it. So it allows that to be sort of more important news, so to speak. And you can have as many of those official news sites as you want in your organization. We already saw that news appears on mobile. So I think, well, my sharing has died again, so I won't show you again. But you'll remember that we had the news feed on mobile. And the final thing I want to suggest, or actually 2 more things I want to suggest to you about how to get news to people is first, get to your users where most of them live today, which is probably still in their inbox. So let's go back full circle to the idea of using modern SharePoint news instead of email, but your users still live in email. Here's the bridge. You can take a news article and you can send by email. And so I can send this to my marketing team, for example. I can put in a little message. You'll see that it has that thumbnail and that description that we configured in the page metadata. And I'll send this, and it will look exactly like this when you receive it in email. You'll have my message, you'll have the thumbnail of the article, you can click it, and that will take you to the actual article where you can engage with the article and like it, comment on it. But it allows me to push this article to people in news. The other option we've got that allows us to use email is with what's called a news digest. So I'm going to click the All News link, which takes me to a page that literally lists every news article on this site. And I'm going to create a digest that puts several articles together for a monthly update to the team. I click Email and News Digest, and I can pick which posts I want to include. So I'll include those two and this one. I then click Next. I put in a name, Contoso Update March 2019. I can decide who to send it to. I do have to remember the name of the group. Everyone. Yeah, everyone would work. I think we actually have a group called Company News Update, but it's resolving slowly here. Well, you can imagine. I can put in some messages here. Great news from across the organization. And then I can rearrange the articles, put them in the order I want them in, and click Send. And so I can get an entire digest to people on a regular basis as well. So this is clearly a way to get the best of both worlds, to get the richness and engagement of SharePoint News and the reach of email. And that's there we go, it resolved. So that's a super effective option. The final option I want to show you is how to bring news into Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams, as you've no doubt heard at least 25 times today, is our hub for teamwork. And we truly do believe it is a phenomenal way for people to work with groups of people on projects, to have integrated chat, collaboration, file sharing, meetings, etc., and to bring all the tools you need into one hub. So let's go ahead and look at Microsoft Teams here. And this particular team is a team of folks involved with managing our retail locations. And so we have a very standard team with conversations and files. But you'll notice we also have a News tab. And when I click that News tab, I can see a news feed that is in fact coming from the SharePoint News system. So I can bring news directly into Microsoft Teams. It looks like someone has actually changed my demo a little bit, so I will show you one more option here. The way this is done is super easy. You add a website tab. Now, website tabs are, in my opinion, the best tab in all of Microsoft Teams because you can bring anything that is hosted on a secure website into Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to go ahead and create a tab called Company News. Hopefully we don't already have that. And I'm going to paste in the link to our news site. So let me go back and get that URL here. Oh, I just closed my team. That was silly. So I'm going to add a tab, website tab called Company News, and I'm going to paste in that URL to our news site. So just like that, I can bring any website into Microsoft Teams, and in this case, what I've brought is a curated news experience built on a SharePoint page or SharePoint site. So all of the things we learned about how these news web parts work are now surfacing to people inside of Teams, and they don't have to go somewhere else to keep on top of what's happening in the company. And this is a really good example of what we mean when we say the intranet is no longer a separate destination. It provides content and it powers experiences that come into experiences like Microsoft Teams. Does that make sense? Cool. So go forth and conquer. Hopefully that will really help you take advantage of SharePoint News. Now let's take a look at the other critical components of and building blocks of the intranet: sites and connected experiences. So SharePoint sites are exactly what many of you know from the past and from other technologies. They're web-based experiences with content. And SharePoint provides those sites and allows you to build experiences to share news and information, vision, resources, and services and knowledge. What I'm going to show you here is all available to you in a wonderful new resource we have called the SharePoint Lookbook. And I'll come back and tell you more about it later, but I want you to know it's there so that as you're seeing these things, you'll know that you're going to be able to share these with your peers at work as well. So we'll look at this in a demo, and then we'll come back. So let's jump back to our news site that we were just on. This is the site we were spending some time on. It is what we call a communication site. SharePoint has two types of sites. There are team sites that power collaboration, are connected to Office 365 groups, and that are best experienced inside of Teams. And there are communication sites that allow you to publish information to a specific audience, generally a broader audience across your organization. Communication sites can be designed to look any way you want and to have these Webparts that bring in content from Office 365 and beyond. And so this communication site was built specifically to have news. And so we used a lot of news Webparts, and communication sites are a great way to share news. But communication sites can also be used to share vision. This particular example shows what we might do with a communication site to empower leaders in the organization to clarify their strategy, the mission, objectives, priorities of the organization. So you can see at the top, we've got links to important resources that the leadership wants to make available to employees. We also have a blog from leaders where they're posting their experiences, updates about events and meetings that they're going to. And this blog is simply SharePoint News. We're just calling it a blog, but it's using the exact same capabilities that we talked about earlier. So the executives can come here, create a news post, and effectively it's a blog. And remember, that blog is published up here. It's surfacing in our news site. So the news from Executive Corner is what's surfacing here. Going down a little bit on this site, we have a quote from our CEO. We've got links to resources that the leadership thinks is important, and to keynotes that they've done recently. And then very importantly, we're bringing in conversation from Yammer. We'll talk more about this scenario tomorrow in our Yammer and Stream session, but Yammer is a wonderful place for people to connect with each other across the organization. And in this case, we're using a Yammer group to allow people to ask questions and express concerns and submit ideas and have a dialogue with leaders. Rather than making people go over to Yammer to do that, we created the group in Yammer, but we've added it to this page with the Yammer Conversations web part, which is shipping right now and gives you a fully engaging or fully interactive experience with Yammer, where I can post, I can reply, I can do all the things I would do in Yammer without having to go to Yammer. If I want to, I can click View All in Yammer and it will take me there, but all I need is right here. So we're bringing the conversation, the social experience into the page. Going on the right side of the page, we have a little bit of a different experience from Yammer, where we're using the Highlights web part to showcase specific conversations that we want to basically pin so that people see conversations that are happening inside of Yammer. Going down a little bit further, we've got an embedded video from Microsoft Stream with our last company meeting, and we've got the Stream channel of all of our recent company meetings. So we've used a page with a variety of web parts, bringing in Yammer and Stream to make it super engaging and super compelling so that leaders can share vision with the entire organization. Another great reason to use communication sites is to share services. When your team is doing something for the rest of the organization and you need a way to interface and communicate with people, a great example of that is an event site. You might be hosting an internal training event or something like that, and that's what this demo represents. It's our drone product training site. We again have a hero web part with key information in it. We've got some text. These are those quick links, just like we had on Naomi's article where we're pointing to her favorite destination. We're, in this case, using links to go to specific functions like a Microsoft form for registration, information about the agenda. And then we're using those people web parts to highlight the speakers, and I can hover over them and learn more about the speakers. Going down a little bit further, we've got some big, bold images to get us to the agenda, and then we've even got an interactive map, and here's that registration form. So we've got a communication site being used to share services across the organization. Another example of a communication site is to share knowledge. So in organizations, it often is important to connect people across teams and to connect them with content as well as with each other. It's what you would call a community of practice, a community of knowledge, a community of interest. That's what this demo represents. In this case, it's a site that gives our field the information they need about upcoming products. So you can see up at the top, we've got a beautiful image and text to lead them to the handbook that's the most important resource for them. Then we've got that people web part linking me to experts about the product. I've got a set of resources. This is trending. This is personalized for me. So it will show me the things that I need to know most about this product. And then again, on the left, we have another Yammer conversation web part. In this case, to bring people together to talk about the new product and its launch. So we're connecting people across the organization to be able to discuss, to share best practices, ideas, and such. And so communication sites can be used for all of these purposes, to share news and information, vision, services, resources, and knowledge. And all of those demos that I just went through very quickly there, you can find in the SharePoint Lookbook. This is an online resource that allows you to see and sort of browse these sites. You can share them with the communicators in your organization and show them just what's possible with SharePoint. There's a beautiful PDF that you can download and share with people. It has even more examples than I showed you, and we're going to be keeping it up to date. So this is a really, really phenomenal resource that I recommend you checking out. All right, so we looked at news. These are the slides in case the demos aren't working one day. We showed the leadership site. We showed a microsite for the events. And we showed communities of practice. So all of those are really good use cases for communication sites, and we've tried to make sites as easy as possible to build. As I mentioned, consumer-grade simplicity, create a page, drag web parts around, and we're going to be announcing more features at the SharePoint conference that make sites and pages even easier to build. Really excited to share those things with you. But the intranet is not just a collection of individual things going on around the organization. It connects those efforts. It connects the teams and the communications and the knowledge and content management. And there's 3 ways to approach building an intranet that connects all of the various content and experiences in your organization. There are hubs, there's roll-up and search, and search, I should say, and there are landing pages. And we'll take a look at each of these, starting with hub sites. In the past, in SharePoint, organizations would create structure by creating sub-sites. They would have a parent site and they would have child sites. And it was a very fixed structure. If the organization changed and this sub-site now was part of another part of the organization, it was basically impossible to move things around. It was a very fixed one-to-one mapping there. Today's organizations are far too dynamic for that structure to be sustainable. And so we introduced a new way to organize intranets called hub sites. And hub sites allow you to take any site, it can be a modern site or a classic site, a team site or a communication site, any layout, any site can be a hub, and you can then associate any other site with that hub. And so you can have multiple sites joined or associated to that hub. And that hub then gives the collection of sites some superpowers. First, it provides a hub for users. It provides a shared navigation, and we'll see what that looks like. It also rolls up content from associated sites to the hub. That includes news and activity and events. And third, it allows you to search in one place at the hub across all the content in the related site. So it's a way of sort of scoping down your search to a set of sites in your organization. It also improves branding and consistency because the hub can enforce design and theme and branding. And finally, it allows you to govern site creation because you can manage which sites are hubs, who can join sites to hubs, and who's allowed to create sites within hubs. So there's all kinds of governance to this as well. So let's take a look at what a hub might be. This particular site is our human resources, our personnel site. And it's built as a hub. And you can tell it's a hub because there's an extra navigation at the top. This is the shared navigation across the hub. So this hub has several different sites that belong to it, including our giving campaign, our charitable contributions site. And when we click that, you'll notice we end up in another site, but it still feels the same. It still has that same shared navigation. The theme is the same. So any theming that we've done would carry through. And I can always bounce up to the hub or to any of the other sites in that hub. If I do a search, clicking in the search box, you'll notice I'm already seeing news and information from across several different sites in the hub. And so I've got that roll-up or that search scope there. And I also see news and information that's coming from across sites. So this is coming from the Ask HR site, from the benefits planning site. This is coming from that giving campaign site. Same thing with events. Events can be coming from any site in the hub. And this particular site, again, is designed for HR, so let's take a quick look at the content we've got here. We've got news, we've got events, and a PowerPoint presentation being used to show a set of financial updates. And then we've got a big, giant, beautiful link to the employee handbook, links to resources across the organization. And what you're seeing on the right is actually a Power App embedded in the page so that I can request time off. And so this is also providing a service to me as a visitor of this site. And going down a little bit further, we've got more and more. So again, a very rich page, lots of great content. The difference is this particular site has been made a hub, and other sites are able to join the hub and participate in the collection. This site is also in our lookbook, so you'll find this site in our lookbook as well. So hubs make roll-up and make organizing your intranet really, really easy. But they're not the only way to do it. Some organizations are trying to figure out, well, if I've got this HR, this human resources hub over here with these sites, what if there's somewhere else and I want that giving campaign to show up there too? Hubs are a one-to-one mapping, so the giving campaign can only belong to one hub. But how do I get that information over there? The answer is just using roll-up. And what I mean by roll-up is that, let's go back to this site to see it. Many of the Webparts allow you to pull content from specific locations. So on this news site, for example, we had this executive corner Webpart, and that's a news Webpart, and I'm able to select the sites that it's pulling from. And so I'm effectively creating a roll-up just like hub sites do without making the executive corner part of a hub with this site. So roll-ups simply mean configuration to pull content where you want it to be, and that's a powerful option. And those two things together allow you to start building landing pages. And this takes us up to the top levels of the intranet, to your departments, your divisions, your regions, even your entire company. And what I'm going to show you now are what you might think of as intranet home pages or portals. We call them landing experiences. And they allow, and all of these sites I'm going to show you were built completely with out-of-the-box functions. There was no code written for this. And they demonstrate just how much better the intranet can be on SharePoint today than the way it's been in the past. Whether with SharePoint or other technologies, intranets usually were multi-month projects. They cost crazy amounts of money. And then they were so hard to change that they weren't very dynamic. And so now, this was built out of the box. I could literally create this site in about 5 minutes. The content, the articles would have to be written, but the site is super easy to create. And this is one example of a landing page. So in this case, we've got news, we've got a weather web part, we've got links to communities across the organization. And then going down here, we see some very personalized elements. This is my news. Again, that's the news web part recommended for current users, so I'll see something different than you. And we see my frequent sites. So this is showing me links to navigate me to the sites I work on most regularly. We go down a little bit further, and there's my calendar, my recent documents, so I can get back to work quickly. And then we've got big, bold links to important communities and efforts and events across the organization. Finally, we're bringing in our Twitter feed and the company conversation from Yammer. So this is a very social, very personalized landing experience. We can see another example here. Let me go to this one. With a little bit of a different design. This is more information dense. It's more focused on getting me the information from my organization. So we see, again, a carousel news web part. We see events up at the top. We have some more news and then a countdown timer to an upcoming launch. Links to important resources with a nice background color. We have a world clock web part that lets me keep track of the time in our other offices. And then a stream channel showing videos of recent company events. Again, all just web parts on pages, nothing custom coded. And you'll notice at the bottom, we have a new footer that is coming out, and you'll be able to configure the links in the footer. And at the top, we've got our header, which now includes something that customers have asked for a long time, which is a mega menu that allows you to drive navigation from across your organization. And this is another point regarding hubs. Hubs created that navigation for you that were shared across the hub. This is another way to do navigation. Just create a menu structure, and you can point people wherever you want. You don't have to physically join things to make that happen. You just have to have navigation. And then one more design here I'd like to share with you is our number 3. And this particular design really is meant to highlight how beautiful a website can be in SharePoint. This is sort of high design, so to speak. We have a motion graphic at the front to capture people's attention. Going down, we've got big, bold, beautiful images. So these are coming from Adobe XD, and I can scroll through them. Well, this is weird. I must be in Europe. So I can scroll through the images. Going down a little bit further, we've got a link into our mixed reality space. We even have a 3D model of an upcoming product that I can drag around and interact with right on the page. And then, again, lots of images, lots of beautiful text. And then only at the bottom do we get to the information and the news and the events. So just 3 very different approaches to creating landing pages. Again, all of these are in the lookbook. And the last web part I'll mention, just sort of bring this full circle, one of my favorite web parts in all of SharePoint is the file viewer web part. The file viewer web part gives you previews and interaction with over 320 different file formats. So way beyond Microsoft Office to everything you can imagine. This is a file viewer web part for a 3D model. But web parts can be used for all sorts of other stuff too. So for example, if we go back to our news site here, let's say that the organization just released a new social media policy. I must not have made it. Oh, there we go. A social media policy. So that was published on a policy site as a Word document, but we want to make sure people know about it. So we actually created a news article announcing the new social media policy, and the web part we used on that page is a file viewer web part showing the Word document. So within the news article, I can actually read the entire Word document, and that will be kept up to date if someone goes back and changes that on the Word document itself. So with web parts, with SharePoint pages and sites, you can really power a variety of scenarios in the modern workplace. So to sort of bring this to a close here, we've done all of that stuff. The modern intranet really does allow you to connect the work that's happening on your teams, that's powering teamwork inside of Microsoft Teams, the employee engagement and communications experience that is allowing you to keep the organization informed, up to date, and engaged in the mission of the organization, and the knowledge and content management you're doing across the organization. And to connect those together with capabilities like hub sites, roll-up and search, and landing pages that you can build with out-of-the-box SharePoint. Hopefully, you can see how the modern intranet not only is easier to build, it's responsive, but it's also natively and automatically dynamic, because these web parts are just pulling content from the work that you're doing across your organization. You're not having to make special efforts to keep the intranet up to date, because whoever's writing news, it's surfacing on your intranet. Whoever's publishing a policy, it's surfacing on your intranet. So it's dynamic. It's personalized. The intelligence of the graph makes sure that what I see is right for me, what you see is right for you. It's actionable. It lets me find what I need and get to work. And it's engaging, allowing me to connect socially in a dialogue to move the organization forward. So thank you very much for listening to that. I know we're out of time, and I promised I would answer questions. So what I'm going to have to do is sort of go outside. An hour is a short time. But thank you guys very much for coming, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at some of my sessions.